Welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on social media at MMA LOTN. This week, we're going over UFC Vegas 53, which is headlined by a bantamweight fight between Marlon Chito Vera and Rob Font. Very intrigued by this fight between two dynamic strikers. Now we finally get to see Chito Vera in a 25-minute fight. Let's see if he can maximize those extra 10 minutes, which a lot of people think that he can. I can't wait to break it down, especially with the guests that I have lined up for you guys today. Yeah, might as well just get right down to it. My host or guest for today is going to be my guy, John Stargaryen, who is obviously, you guys know him, obviously for helping out with the Propping You Up show on Fight Night weeks. Fortunately for the show, it's been picked up full time by the All-Star, but they want that Cody Saftik name attached to it. But fortunately, we have my guy John, who's going to be playing backup in case one of us can't make it. So I thought, what better way to give him a legitimate Propping You Up goodbye by bringing him on to the show for the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. John, what's going on, my guy?
What's going on, man? Preet, how you doing? I'm pumped to get into this.
Yes, sir. I'm good, man. I do want to, show my appreciation and thanks for you for stepping in on the Fight Night shows of Propping You Up. I enjoy talking to you on a week-to-week basis, hearing your nutty takes, which sometimes pay off, which sometimes don't. But again, it's always good to have an open mind when you're talking about MMA gambling, and you're definitely one of the more open-minded guys that we have in the space.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. And believe me, I had a great time doing it. And I'm still going to give you those takes in the DMs.
So. that was one of the things that I told you right away. I'm like, I still want your nutty takes in the DMs, especially if we don't get to talk on a week-to-week basis. But no, you'll definitely be a staple on this Ultimate Weigh-In show as well, because I just love chopping it up with you. Didn't have you on this show in the past just because I was already talking to you pretty much every week on the Propping You Up show, but you'll definitely be on the Ultimate Weigh-In show moving forward. So I always ask this to my guests before we get into the breakdowns. From a fan's perspective, from an entertainment perspective, what fights stick out to you most on tomorrow night's card?
Ooh, I mean, in terms of like pure entertainment, I suspect the Silva Figueiredo is probably going to be the best fight of the night, to be honest. Obviously, the main event should be high action, but I think the Silva Figueiredo, first of all, has high potential to be comedy, but also for as long as it lasts is going to be very, very high action. And then, who doesn't like watching the GOAT Jake Collier go to work, and seeing if he can take the boring out of Andre Arlovski.
I'm surprised I don't have a Jake Collier fight kit by this point in time. I gotta if he pulls off the victory tomorrow night, I'll finally buy one of those kits, especially to add a scalp like Andre Arlovski to his record. You gotta show the guy some respect after that. But yeah, glad that he's stepping in there. Glad we're finally getting Romanov back in the cage, especially against Sherman. But I'm very excited about the first fight of the night, so we might as well just get right into the breakdowns for that specifically. First fight of the night, we got Carlos Candelario going up against UFC debutant Tatsuro Tyra. Right now we got odds of minus 240 on Tyra and plus 205, plus 200-ish I'm seeing on Candelario. Surprised to see the line movement here more even in favor of Tatsuro. When we kind of spoke very briefly in the DMs earlier this week, Candelario was one of the first names that you brought to my attention. I'm just like, interesting, right? Whenever you see a undefeated prospect come into the UFC, there's always that little bit of you that wants to go out there and fade them, especially if you're getting solid, underdog odds on his opponent. And then after running the tape and to have those things kind of justified on tape for you to go out there and bet a big dog, it comes out feeling pretty good. So I did come out on the Candelario side after running the tape. I'm impressed with his submission defense. I'm impressed with his ability to stay out of big trouble on the mat, which is where it seems that Tatsuro has most of his success. The first fight that I actually watched of Tatsuro was him against, I can't remember the guy's name, but had a huge size advantage over him and pretty much just kept him at bay with the leg kick from the outside and a jab here or there. And whenever he wanted to get to the fight to the ground, it seemed like he was just so much stronger than his opponent that he could drag him to the ground when he needed to. And then when he went up against other guys, he got into the grappling almost immediately. He has impressive back takes. I'll definitely give him that. And he seems to be pretty good, well-versed in those situations where he's able to pull out rear naked naked chokes. But my question comes, what happens when he's not able to get that rear naked choke? And I feel like we have solid submission defense on the Candelario side of things, that he can survive those positions, possibly even find himself getting a reversal, ending up on top. And then from on top, he has great ground and pound, good control from on top, and very dominant from on top. So I'm intrigued to see what Tyra looks off of his back, because we haven't seen much of him off of his back. He's definitely going to be tested there in this situation, and he's not going to look like a minus 240 favorite at all, in my opinion. So I haven't pulled the trigger yet, and thankfully I haven't, because it looks like the line is continuing to widen. I will eventually pull the trigger, at least one unit here on Candelario, as I do think he's in a good underdog spot. Based on resume and based on everything, there's a decent argument that he deserves to be the slight favorite in this spot as well. So got to take a shot on him around that plus 200 marks here. I'm going Candelario. I think he beats him by decision, because I think Tyra's jiu-jitsu will be good enough to kind of keep him out of any major trouble of getting finished on the mat here. But yeah, I like Candelario's style, from not just a submission defense, which is kind of the thing that I've been harping on for the majority of this breakdown, but his striking as well, right? He's going to give resistance to Tyra. Tyra doesn't seem like he's faced much resistance at all. Maybe the last guy he fought, I believe it was the Italian guy that he fought, that he, landed a couple calf kicks on and then eventually got back into the grappling realm. But that guy just didn't seem like he knew what he was doing in the striking realms. Whereas I feel like Candelario will have a little bit better understanding how to deal with the range that Tyra brings to the table. I like Candelario. Pretty simple decision. His decision line is currently plus 400, but the fact that we're getting plus 200 on his money line, just take the money line. No need to get cute with it. I feel like you're going to echo the same sentiments I have here, but please do fill the gaps that you feel I missed out on.
Yeah, I mean, I like Candelario a decent bit here. I think I have 2 units on him at like plus 220, and I still think there's plenty of value at current line, like plus 190, plus 200 range. I think it's an interesting fight, but it's like, to get to Tatsuro being minus 250 range, you would need a lot more certainties than what we have available here. I do kind of think Candelario is one of these guys who can get his back taken, and like a Tatsuro back take submission wouldn't shock me. But then again, he had Candido on top, and Candido is a serious jiu-jitsu player, likely a better jiu-jitsu player than Tatsuro, if we're being honest. And he got his back and couldn't sub him, and he actually managed to stay safe in a hard grappling fight in his first appearance on Contender Series. So, like, I think Tatsuro could get a back take, but I think him subbing him is unlikely. In the striking, I just struggle to put much value into anything Tatsuro's done so far. He just hasn't fought any really capable strikers. So it's like, he looks low volume. Technically, he looks fine. But again, when you make a level jump like this, you don't know how he's going to react to guys feinting, showing him different looks, giving him different angles. And we know Candelario will go forward and, will put a decent pace out there. And then wrestling, like, I'm pretty sure Candelario is the better wrestler. I think if he wants him, and I'm guessing he will, he's going to get takedowns here. Again, you touched on it. We don't know what Tatsuro is like on his back. Maybe he won't play guard. Maybe he will. Maybe he can get back up. Maybe he can't. But, I do feel confident in saying the American wrestler is better than the Japanese wrestler. And I actually like Candelario in general. Plus, I just think, I know he gassed out against Victor Altamirano, but that was very, very short notice. And Candelario traditionally has been known for having quite good cardio. So I don't think you can really project him to gas out here. And I guess for me, it's just, I have a lot more knowns with Candelario. He fights in a manner that I really like, high output, grapple heavy. And he's fighting a guy who, look, his jiu-jitsu looks good, but I'm not sure it's anything Candelario hasn't seen here. Like, is he a better jiu-jitsu player than Victor Altamirano or Orlando Candido? I don't really think so. Maybe he is, but I don't see much to suggest that. So I'm with you. There is a case for him being a favorite, but again, there's just so many data unknowns. What I do know is that the line where it currently is crazy. Maybe we all go down in flames here, but I mean, I have to play Candelario at this number.
I don't know what it is, the mystique of foreign undefeated fighters that just end up being chalk when they come to the UFC. I remember Zviad Lazishvili. I know he had the Georgian thing going for him, but he goes up against a battle-tested guy, and Jonathan Martinez has a slight favorite. Don't really understand that. And then Tyra here, he could be this phenom that we just don't know yet, but it all depends on how he performs tomorrow night against Candelario. But I'm willing to take the shot in the dark here that Candelario will give him his toughest test to date. If he passes it, all respect to Tyra, and I'll probably give him that respect moving forward. So looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. All right, let's go from that very interesting bout here to Gina Mazzany versus Shanna Young. In terms of odds, we got the obvious chalk on Gina Mazzany at -180, plus 155 the return on Shanna Young. Now, Shanna Young finally fighting down at her natural weight class of 125 pounds. She looked great on the scales. She was probably happy to finally fight at that weight class, especially after going up against two grapple-heavy opponents last time around at a weight class above what she's normally used to fighting at. Now she's going up against Gina Mazzany, who's also a grappler, but as known to have cardio issues, which has cost her in a couple fights, most recently the Priscilla Cachoeira fight. There was also that infamous moment of her against Lena Landsberg going into that third round where she wanted to puke in her bucket because she was so goddamn tired. If Shanna Young can make her work, even with her getting taken down, things could get very hairy for Gina Mazzany the later that this fight goes. I just think that Gina Mazzany's grappling will be too much for Shanna Young to handle, which will allow Gina to get this fight to the ground over and over again. I haven't seen much off of Shanna Young's back to make me believe that she's going to force Gina Mazzany to work too much. But the spot that I actually find the most intriguing here is the over 2.5, which is currently sitting at -165 on certain spots. I don't think that Mazzany will be able to submit Shanna Young. I do think she'll be able to have that, top control, top pressure, not exerting too much energy going from ground and pound, just so that she can sustain her level of work rate over the full 15 minutes rather than, gassing herself out in the first 7.5 to 9 minutes of a fight. Young's best path here is obviously in the striking. So if she can keep it in the striking realm, she'll have massive amount of success there, piecing up Gina Mazzany, who just doesn't really have that much of a striking game. But I feel like this is Mazzany's fight to win. I just don't feel comfortable paying -180 on her. Not to mention the over 2.5 just seems way more intriguing to me rather than the Mazzany money line in this spot. And lastly, I need to give a little bit of a shout out to the potential draw here, right? If Gina Mazzany's gas tank is horrible, plus 6,600 on the draw for Shanna Young to get a dominant third round, not out of the realm of possibility, worth a little bit of a sprinkle. And then the obvious Shanna Young round 3 at plus 1,800. I don't know if she'll be able to get her out of there, but whenever we have a fighter with obvious cardio issues, got to take a little bit of a stab at it, especially at those wild odds. But my official prediction for this is going to be Mazzany. She looked great on the scale. She looked great at the face-offs. That further cements that she should go out there and win this fight. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I bet Mazzany around -150. I still think there might be a tad bit of value at -180. It's kind of like hard to say because, with Gina, it's always a scary proposition, right? Like if her name was if she was another random fighter with the same game as Gina Mazzany, I'd be pretty big on her, to be honest. But I had 2 units on her because it is Gina Mazzany at the end of the day. But I look at this fight and it's so hard for me to envision. Other than Mazzany just completely death gassing and getting finished late, what does Shanna Young winning minutes even look like here? This is a woman who was out grappled by Sarah Alpar, easily judoed and submitted or finished by Stephanie Egger. She's just a bad grappler, in general. Sorry.
My man John under the weather a little bit, but it's all good. He's powering through it.
I am powering through. But, I just hold on.
While John gets his voice back together, I do want to give a shout out to my guy Kanath here saying, where is it? Why is it not showing up? There we go. Over 2.5 in women's MMA since the start of the year has set at over 70%. Solid start there. Go ahead, John.
But yeah, I mean, look, Gina, whatever you want to say about her, she's a good wrestler. She is a good wrestler for WMA. She's got a decent top game. The biggest problem we've seen with Gina hasn't really been a lack of grappling ability so much as she's a bit fragile. She can be gassy at times. But also, if you look at the girls that beat her, but for the women that beat her, pardon me, the Cachoeira fight is bad, but Cachoeira is a zombie and a big hitter, Julia Avila putting her out. Can I really get that upset about that? Getting subbed by Sarah McMahon? Again, it's Gina's a grappler going up against one of the best grapplers in women's MMA. She's not taking L's to light hitters. You don't have soft hitters going in there and putting her out. You saw what happened when she fought Rachel Ostovich and Wu Yanan when she wasn't facing a serious threat. She mauled them both. And I just kind of think we know Gina's going to attempt takedowns. I know she's going to shoot within 30 seconds of this fight. And so I think she's pretty reliable to get takedowns here. I think probably dominate on top. For me, the lack of finishing ability from Young makes me strongly diminish the chances of her getting put out here, even if she does slow down. Like, I think Young's defensive grappling is bad enough that a gassed out Gina could possibly lay in prayer, to be honest with you. So, like, with that being said, look, again, I can't go big on it because we have seen Gina quit before. The catch fight was a bad look, but I just don't think Young got out-grappled by Sarah Alpar. I know Gina Mazzany is a much better grappler than her. So I'm taking the shot here. I have 2 units on her. I think it's worth a poke.
There you go, John. Going back to the wall with Gina Mazzany, but with her style of fighting, I can completely understand it. I'm just hoping for his bankroll that she does not go out there and death cast, trying to finish Shanna Young early in this fight. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Mike Breeden going up against Natan Levy. In terms of odds, we got -190 on Levy and +165 to return on the Glory MMA product, Mike Breeden. Now, I'm not a big guy on Breeden. I don't even think he really, can cut it in the UFC. He barely cut it on the Contender Series, right? He lost to his Contender Series fight against fellow Canadian Anthony Romero. Decent striker, decent grappler, but just not UFC level at this point. Natan Levy, on the other hand, solid karate base that he has with the striking, but surprisingly enough, he likes to go to his grappling more than he likes to rely on his striking, getting fights to the ground, using his physicality against his opponents, dominating them on the ground. I believe he has I think it's 3 wins by decision and 3 by submission. So he is looking for finishes on the ground more so from a jiu-jitsu aspect. But I do think that Breeden's submission defense will likely hold up here, allowing this fight to go the full 15 minutes. Fight goes to decision, currently sits at -150, but I do think it's going to be Levy that gets the better positions here, stays ahead of the curve pretty much the entire time here. And outside of a Mike Breeden Hail Mary knockout of some sort, I'd be surprised if Natan Levy loses this fight. Am I running to the betting window to bet -190 on Natan Levy though? Maybe not, but I just don't think Mike Breeden has what it takes to cut it in the UFC. So I might have him in a degenerate parlay or something. I'm talking about Natan Levy here, because although he may not look like a -190, I feel like he'll still be able to go out there and get his hand raised in the spot. This is one of those spots where we might just have to throw probability and all that shit out the window because it's that type of fight. Both guys, Natan Levy is a fringe UFC guy as is, but I feel like he has a solid enough skill set to go out there and beat a guy like Mike Breeden. So give me Levy by decision, maybe a sprinkle on his submission prop or something, but I don't want much to do with this fight. Give me Levy. What about yourself, John?
Yeah, again, not a fight I'd normally be looking to bet, but I did label this Juice Week 2022, and
I saw that.
I'm honestly thinking about Levy. I'd like a better number than where it is,
Yeah.
but with Breeden, then you touched on it. I don't think there's anything about Breeden's game, striking or grappling, that's UFC level, durability wise. He's a good soldier who stepped up to fight Alexander Hernandez on short notice, and that's why he's in the UFC. I mean, bottom line. Levy, I have my problems with Levy in particular. I think he is very hittable. And I don't, like you touched on, I don't understand why he is so willing to go to his grappling when he comes from a striking background. But with that said, I actually think Levy is reasonably talented. The problem with him is he's just so raw. This is with 7 fights who probably needed another 5 to 7 fights to be ready for the UFC, and instead he's getting plunged in here. But I think he's a decent grappler. I think he's a decent striker. I think he's the much better athlete by a mile here. The truth of the matter is, I think he's significantly better at Breeden in every aspect of MMA. As you mentioned, Breeden kind of needs a Hail Mary. And look, Levy keeps his hands down when he stand up. So there might be opportunities there for Breeden to get that Hail Mary. But I can't see Breeden winning on pace. I can't see him winning on technique. And I can't see him winning on grappling. And so, with that being the case, I don't know. I mean, -185, -190 doesn't seem so bad, right? Is Mike Breeden really 30% to KO him? Is he 20% to KO him? I don't really think so, So I'm kind of holding out for a better number, but I do like the Levy side of things here.
Personally, I have Levy down as 70% in this spot, so maybe he
Yeah,
should go out
that's
there
fair.
and get it done the way that we expect. The guy always looks sculpted as hell as at the weigh-ins too. The guy's in damn good shape, especially compared to Mike Breeden. But yeah, look good on the scales. Same with Mike Breeden. Nothing of note that we should be really talking about in terms of the weigh-ins from that fight. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Johan Lainesse going up against Gabe Green. We got minus 135 now on Gabriel Green and plus 115 on Johan Lainesse. Very interesting fight here because Lainesse, he's that prototypical, KO or bust kind of guy, but he hasn't busted yet. And that sounded very weird for me to say, but it just hasn't come to fruition. He goes out there and puts out these guys because he has a ton of big power. I know he has a couple of decision victories earlier in his professional MMA career, but he seems like one of those guys that just heavily relies on the power to get his opponents out of there. Is Gabe Green going to be one of those guys that finally, gets past that big power and gets him out of there? I'm inclined to think so. I know he got finished earlier in his MMA career, but his durability seems to be improving over his last several fights, especially after taking that hellacious beating he did from Daniel Rodriguez in his UFC debut. But like, he can keep chugging forward. He can wade through any of the big power that comes from his opponents, and he just lets his own combinations go. I think he's the better striker of the two. I think he's the better fighter over 15 minutes if required. But can he get past that early power here from Johan? And that's the big issue here. Earlier this week, I saw, like, I don't know what it was, what day it was, but almost everybody I followed put out a bet on Gabe Green because it was a pick'em line. It was like minus 110, and then out of nowhere, I just see like bet after bet after bet after bet, and now he was up to minus 140ish. And just for credit's sake, the first person I saw on him was my guy Rockstar Z, literally the first guy that I saw post that, and then after that, I saw all these other bets come out on him. I see the angle, right? He is the better striker, he is the better overall fighter, but at what point does Johan's power start to fall off and not allow him to win these fights, right? We see it all the time. These guys have just crazy amount of knockouts and finishes on the regional scene. They might get one or two in the UFC, but then it starts to taper off, and you don't see that power really translate for them anymore. I think it's going to be this fight, but I just don't have the balls to go out there and bet a guy like Gabe Green because he is quite hittable, right? He is hittable. Johan's going to land a couple big bombs. Will he be able to survive them? That's another question to be answered. But a couple of the props here on Johan seem kind of intriguing. Johan in round one at plus 350, not too bad of a line. And even his KO line here at plus, now it's taken some action. It's down to about plus 200. That seems to be his main path to victory here. If he's going to knock out Gabe Green, if he's going to win, it will likely come by knocking out Gabe Green. I think Gabe survives the early onslaught, starts to put it together more in the second round, and probably finishes Johan in the third round with his own striking as Johan starts to slow down in this spot. Big question marks in this fight. I'm staying away. I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts and if you have a very convincing argument for one side or the other.
No, I'm kind of with you here. It's funny because when I went to tape this fight, I had looked at it and I was like, this is the exact kind of spot I like is Gabe Green. It's like, I have a guy with UFC experience. He's got more fights. He's got 2 fights in the UFC. He has a win in the UFC. And he's taken on a guy that's pretty gassy. But I looked at it and again, I get the angle on Green, especially if you got dog money, I can get it. But I don't think Gabe Green is that good. It's funny because I remember being impressed with Green, but when I rewatched it, look, he's a decent athlete. He keeps a decent pace. But to your point, he keeps his hands very low. And, look, his durability has held up okay in the UFC. He obviously fought Rowe and fought Rodriguez, and he hung in there okay. But, he was pretty fragile regionally, and he got hurt a bunch regionally. And so I don't know if this is a case of, he's cleaned up his process, whatever, or, his pre-fight process to the point that he's more durable, or, chins can be weird sometimes. Khalil Roundtree and Marcin Prokhnio went the distance. Weird stuff happens in the UFC,
Crazy.
So it's like, he is there to be hit. And I do think Lainesse hits pretty hard, and I also think in the grappling, I don't really rate Johan Lainesse's grappling that highly. But I know he's a purple belt, but I really haven't liked what I've seen from Green on the mat. He seems like he's got fairly weak hips. It seems like he relies on, going for heel hooks to get out of positions, which is something I'm just not a fan of. Like, getting heel hooks in the UFC is such a low percentage move. And it usually, if the guy has a clue, just ends in you in a worse position. So it's hard for me to trust Green, but on the other side of things, I'm with you. Look, I think Lainesse is going to have success early in this fight, but I do kind of think unless he shows cardio that we haven't seen in the past, if this gets past 7.5 minutes, Green's likely going to take over down the stretch here. I noticed Johan doesn't check kicks and Green throws a lot of them. He had big success with those against Phil Rowe. So I guess looking at the line, I probably would make Green a slight favorite, but I don't think he is trustworthy here at all. Not for me to lay a minus number with him.
Yeah, and I'm still scratching my head as to how that Phil Rowe and Gabe Green fight went the full 15 minutes. That's one spot I had the under 2.5, and I felt like that was going to cash at any moment, but neither guy really stepped on the gas to get the finish there. But yeah, interested to see how this one plays out. Hopefully, we get to see a little bit more of Lainesse and see, hopefully that aids us in capping his fights in the future. But we need to see more than 5 minutes of him inside the cage against somebody that's I guess Gabe Green's a UFC vet now. Let's call him a UFC vet, a couple fights into his career. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. And we got a banger. We got Daniel De Silva going up against Francisco Figueiredo. In terms of odds, we got minus 120. Yeah, let's say minus 120 on De Silva and plus 100 on Francisco Figueiredo. I like the fight doesn't go to decision here at minus 120. I think that's a great line, especially when you have a fighter like Daniel De Silva who goes out there and who has never seen the third round, but literally just comes out like a banshee, tries to get his opponents out of there, flying stuff, spinning stuff, very active with his jiu-jitsu once the fight hits the mat as well. But I do think that this is another spot where we'll see, either he gets that early finish or he probably gets finished a little bit later. I know he's only been finished once or even been beaten once by flyweight standout Jeff Molina in his UFC debut. But I think that Francisco Figueiredo's poor man God of War style should help him here to maybe get a later finish on Daniel De Silva. My official pick is Daniel De Silva early. I do think he clips Francisco here and either gets a club and sub or just a ground and pound finish. But if it does get into that second round, obvious live bet on Francisco Figueiredo, who's not a cardio machine by any means, but good God, does Daniel De Silva's gas tank look horrible once it starts to get stretched a little bit. So I think Figueiredo finishes him either later or Daniel De Silva gets to finish early. I'm leaning more so with the latter here, but my bet will more than likely be the fight doesn't go to decision, which currently hangs around minus 120, minus 130. How do you feel about this one?
Well, first of all, this is the kind of fight that if you're about the 420 life, I suggest you go and smoke up right before, because there is the potential that this could be hilarious. My gut feeling about this fight is De Silva's going to come out like a bat out of hell and just smoke him out of there immediately and sub him. Because I do think in terms of the upside in this fight, I think it's all on De Silva. He's the much better athlete. He's the much more dangerous fighter. But with that said, Figueiredo is a black belt, and I've seen like these talks that if he doesn't get him out of there, live bet Figueiredo. And I think some people are forgetting, yes, De Silva has a tendency to go too hard and gas himself out. Figueiredo does not have good gas himself. This could really, if he doesn't get him out of there in the first 6 or 7 minutes, this could devolve into an 125-pound version of a heavyweight fight. That is an in-play outcome here, and it would be a riot to see. But with that said, look, I do think, we saw Malcolm Gordon handle Figueiredo in the grappling. We saw Jerome Rivera got takedowns there. He's very hittable. I don't think Little Fig has really a whole lot of upside in the UFC. Whereas De Silva, I kind of think if he kind of learns to fight within himself a little bit, he actually could be a decent UFC fighter, but he just needs to learn to manage his energy a bit. But I think he has all the upside in this matchup. I think the line is fine because there is always the chance he cardio deaths again and gets finished. But, my gut is the explosive guy. What's the underpriced at here?
So the fight doesn't go to decision is about minus 120, minus 130. The
like
under
that.
2.5 is minus 110 plus 100. So
yeah, I actually kind of I might play that. That actually is not bad. And if you're laying a minus one or a 125-pound fight to not go the distance, you want it to be fought at a high pace. And De Silva, very reliable to force that kind of a pace. Plus, he's a proactive finisher. So I kind of like that. And De Silva's my lean here.
Yeah, again, very difficult to trust chalk for a guy that likely only has 4 to 6 minutes of gas, right? And again, you nailed it. Figueiredo isn't a Energizer Bunny in his own right either, but I think he still has that finishing upside the later that this fight goes. All right. Let's move on to the next one here. It is the prelim headliner. We were supposed to get it last week. I don't think we need to talk too much about it, though. But we got Alexander Romanov coming in as a minus 2,500 favorite, plus 1,200 the return on Chase Sherman. If you're getting your leg kick caught by Jake Collier, taken down and smashed to bits, eventually giving up your back to a rear naked choke, what do you think's going to happen when King Kong Romanov steps in the cage with you? Give me Romanov round one, minus 190. I know that's a little bit chalky, but I feel like if he goes out there and just fights how he normally does, and that's go for the takedown almost immediately, he's going to get the takedown. He's going to get these dominant positions. Chase Sherman's going to turtle up, and either he pounds him out from on top or he sinks in the rear naked choke of his own and gets him out of there. I don't want to take away from the possibility that if this fight does go late, Chase Sherman could be a little bit live, especially after what we saw in the Espino and Romanov fight, as it does look like his cardio might be a little bit of a little bit suspect, but he came in much better shape last week when we saw him at the weigh-ins. Obviously, he's looking just as good this time around. He used to tip the scales at 265 pounds. Now he's coming in around the 230, 240 mark. The guy looks in amazing shape. Let's see if it helps him out, especially with his cardio. But I just don't think it's going to show in this fight because I don't even think it's going to go past the first round here. So, yeah, give me Romanov. Romanov inside the distance is fucking minus 650. Good God. But Romanov in round one is probably the way that you'll make the best money here. Maybe even fight won't start round two minus 200 to potentially, cover a Sherman Hail Mary KO. But I just don't see that happening. Sherman, not a huge hitter nowadays. Maybe when he was on the juice back in the day against like Villanueva, he might have been able to catch Romanov. But now at this point, what is it? 3-fight losing streak right now. He's on fighting for his job.
New contract.
New contract. He's getting cut after this, dog. He's getting cut after this. Going to bare knuckle after this. But yeah, give me a Romanov round one. Anything else you want to add to this one?
What I will say is if Romanov round one doesn't hit, then Romanov's probably in some degree of trouble. And I say that because if Romanov gets him down early in round one, he's probably finishing him. I really, really would be hard pressed to imagine Sherman surviving on the mat for like 4 minutes with Romanov on top of him. I mean, Jake Collier just ripped through him on the mat. Sherman got ripped apart on the mat by Augustus Sakai. The guy can't grapple. Just the reality. So if Romanov if it gets to round two, then you're talking about like, well, what happened in round one? Because something crazy did, So I guess what I'm saying is I actually like the round one as well, because it's like if Romanov is actually going to be a huge favorite, he's probably finishing him early. With that said, though, the money line is almost reaching like banana peel pricing here, like right? Like plus 1,300 in a heavyweight fight. Like I agree with every take you just had, every single one, but I'm like 7% like for a heavyweight fight. Like, what if it just happens that 236-pound Romanov has more trouble taking him down early in this fight? What if he gets injured? What if he eats a couple leg kicks and his nerve gets fucked up? Like that, this seems like not a live outcome, but like more live than what the line implies. Am I going to bet Sherman? No, but I'm just saying it is like the price is approaching like, what are we actually doing here? But I'm with you. I think if you're going to play it, take Romanov round one, because honestly, if it goes to the second round, then something's probably gone tragically wrong.
I'm glad that you brought up the banana peel thing here, because something that happened last week with Dean Barry and Mike Jackson, with Dean Barry being like a minus 1,100 favorite. And I've kind of been messing around with the Kelly betting, betting system, just to like try to figure out unit sizing a little bit better and seeing how that works. And I did one experiment last week with the Dean Barry fight where I put him at 85% to win that fight, but it still spit out that I should have a point. What was it? Let me just pull it up here. Is a 0.57 unit bet on Mike Jackson, just in case anything crazy happens at plus 700.
Yeah.
And what do you expect? Something fucking crazy happened. So even in this situation, I put Romanov at 90%, but it's still spitting out a 0.2 unit bet on the Chase Sherman side at plus 1,000 in case anything crazy happens. Not that I think that Chase Sherman is going to win, but the odds, as crazy as they are, and yes, everybody and their mother think Alexander Romanov wins. It's fucking MMA. Anything crazy could happen. He could go out there and unintentionally foul him, but still lose the fight. Shit like that can happen. So there is no justification at all to playing minus 2,500, putting it into parlays, and getting those extra couple cents that you'll probably get off that. Stay away from this fight. or bet him inside the distance, bet him in round 1. You're getting much better value off of that than chucking in minus 2,500 for no goddamn reason. So, yeah. Anything you want to add there?
No, right on.
Perfect. All right. That brings us to the main card and another opportunity for me to remind the 100 live viewers that we currently have. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, show my guy John some love as well. You guys can follow him at MMA Fox. That's FAWKES on Twitter, so you guys can get his nutty takes on your timeline as well. But trust me, he is the dog hunter extraordinaire, and it definitely paid off at UFC 273, where he cashed, what was it, plus 450 on Sterling or plus 350?
Sterling.
There you go. So you're not hearing that from anybody else. Everybody just wrote off Sterling, but my guy John over there was still trying to play the numbers, the probabilities, and it fucking played out for him as well. All right, let's get to the main card here. We got Gerald GM3 Meerschaert going up against Christoph Jotko. Minus 175 on Jotko, plus 150 the return on GM3. I really like me some Jotko in this spot, man. I think that this is a good way or a good spot for him to use his speed, his better footwork, and his better striking against a very slow plodding GM3 who, heavily reliant on his jiu-jitsu game. And even as a minus 250 favorite against Dustin Stoltzfus, almost fumbled the bag there. Luckily, Stoltzfus sucks, and he was able to get that third round submission and get him out of there. But it does not look good when GM3 is not able to get his way, right? The Mahmoud Murdov fight, moments away from getting stopped. I think it was Mark Smith who was even warning GM3 to work some more. Luckily, saved himself and then eventually got that finish in the second round. But it's just, it's not going to happen every time. You're not going to get your butt whooped every single time and then come back and get the win. And I feel like Jotko is enough of a veteran here to, keep the fight standing. I think his takedown defense is decent. I think his clinch control, where he gets a decent amount of work done, will be very important here against Gerald Meerschaert. But once he breaks away from the clinch and continues to use his distance striking, his speed and his combinations are going to be too much for Gerald Meerschaert, whose striking is pretty much just power shots, blitzing forward to crash the pocket, to either clip his opponent to get them to think about something so that he can change levels and take them down, or just to close the distance so that he can get in on desperation takedown. Outside of that, doesn't really bring much to the table. I like Jotko here. Jotko's a decision machine, so I'd rather take him by decision as well. I don't mind paying the chalk on him here at minus 175 because I think that this is a great spot for him to go out there and just do what Jotko does, right? I think he has one KO finish in the UFC, considering the diminishing returns that we're getting on the Gerald Meerschaert side. Because, again, how much can you continue, get your ass kicked and not get finished? Maybe a finish transpires in the spot for Jotko, just clicking it or landing the perfect shot on him. I'm going Jotko, though. I don't mind paying the chalk. I feel like this is a good spot for him to do Jotko things. Am I off on this? You got a nutty case for GM3 or what?
No, I honestly kind of like the over 2.5 here, to be honest. It's close to even money. You're not wrong. And like GM3 is reliable to put himself in harm's way, to get injured badly or to finish people. He tends to be an agent of chaos who just brings it into every fight. For me, like, I really wanted to play GM3 going into the tape just because, like, I'm always kind of concerned about Jotko's output and whatnot. But I just think he's kind of got Meerschaert outskilled. And I think if he takes the path of least resistance, Jotko only attempts like 3.5 takedowns per 15, but Meerschaert only defends takedowns at like 50%. I think there's a pretty good chance Jotko just takes him down and holds him down. I know Meerschaert has made a habit of getting mounted and sweeping guys out of mount. I don't think that is a very sustainable habit, to be honest with you. My gut feeling is, if Jotko fights intelligently, and he does tend to fight intelligently for the most part, he's likely just going to blanket him or clinch him up for 15 minutes here. Even at range, I like the activity of Meerschaert a bit more. Just he throws more strikes. He tends to land more strikes, but Jotko is just a superior technician. So it's like, I don't really trust Meerschaert to get off, the volume that he's going to need to win this fight. I mean, even if you look back at, and I bet him against Murdov as a big dog, but even in that fight, he was getting absolutely lit up like a Christmas tree until Murdov gassed out. That's kind of the story of every one of his fights. The only kind of fight to the contrary there is the Eric Anders fight. And Anders, he's pretty happy to let guys just get free volume off on him. So again, I don't know what to put into that. I think Jotko is the superior fighter skill-wise, but I do think he's fairly unlikely to submit Meerschaert. Chance he melts him just because his chin is going. But over -110 in a Jotko fight where Jotko's -175, that seems kind of silly to me. So I kind of like the over here.
Yeah, over's not a bad look at all. I think the reasoning for that is GM3 style, right? He wants to go out there, he wants to get the finish. If he wins, it likely looks like a finish, but also his diminishing durability could also be playing into that line as well. But yeah, I like Jotko here. The more that I think about it, I do lean the money line more than any prop, just because of that potential of him clipping Meerschaert at a certain point. But with him not historically being much of a finisher, it's tough to put too much emphasis on him, finding that knockout at a certain point here. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Let's move on to the next fight here, and we're looking at Darren Elkins going up against Tristan Connolly. In terms of odds, we got -180 for Elkins, +160 to return on Tristan Connolly. I don't know what it is. Maybe my eyes are deceiving me, but Elkins looked kind of rough at the weigh-ins today. Not saying that it's changing my pick or prediction or anything, because what I've been saying earlier this week is, like, I am picking the Elkins side, but I do think the line is a little bit wide here, as Tristan Connolly, solid grappler, man, very good grappler. We obviously saw in the Michel Pereira fight, but his bread and butter is his jiu-jitsu game. He owns a jiu-jitsu gym, for God's sakes. The guy can go out there and grapple with the best of them, as we saw in his Pat Sabatini fight. Although Sabatini was getting the better of most of these positions and using good control, he just couldn't get Connolly out of there, because Connolly's very well versed in those spots. Now, what Darren Elkins, we know that's kind of his style, right? He likes to go out there and just smother his opponents, get them to the ground, kind of beat them with pace and pressure and just relentlessness. But I think that's something that Connolly will be able to deal with pretty easily. Not easily, but deal with it well here. Like, I don't think he's going to get smoked out on the mat at all. I don't think it's going to look like a -180 performance for Darren Elkins either. I think this is going to be a very close fight. I can see the argument for the underdog Connolly here, especially taking him to win by decision, which was obviously going to be a little bit juicier here, sitting at +300. But the spot that I'm kind of leaning at, I know it's a little bit chalky, but it's kind of the same range of the Darren Elkins money line, is the fight to go to decision at -185, -180. I see this being a back and forth grappling contest where either guy can get their hand raised. I have Elkins as the slight favorite here. I believe I put him down as I have him down as 55%, 60%, between that mark, because I think that Connolly will make this very, very competitive in the grappling realm. In the striking, we know Elkins' striking is really not that great. It's more so just durability. Let me get hit so that I can hit you back, essentially. That's all it is in the Darren Elkins side. Not saying that Tristan Connolly is this crazy striker or Israel Adesanya level striker or anything like that, but I do think that his striking will be good enough to deal with whatever Elkins brings to the table in that realm. I'm going Elkins as an official pick, ever so slightly, but I do lean the fight goes to decision as my favorite bet for this fight. What about yourself?
Yeah, so I bet Elkins pretty big at -140. Look, I'm an Elkins stan. Don't get me wrong. Big fan of Darren Elkins. But like, looking at this fight, it's kind of one of those fights where it's like, I get it. People remember Connolly for the Pereira fight. What people tend to forget about the Michel Pereira fight is Michel Pereira was gassed out of that fight 2.5 minutes in and still almost won that fight. Now, in fairness to Connolly, it's not his fault Pereira was gassed out, and he was on short notice and up a weight class for that fight.
2 weight classes.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because I've heard a lot of people say, I was going to bring that up, Connolly used to fight at 170. It's like, no, he fucking didn't. He took a short notice fight in the UFC at 170. He did not fight at 170,
Yeah.
I actually kind of think Connolly's almost a worse version of Elkins to me. I think he's a decent, he's maybe a better submission grappler. Like, if they put Giza on, I'm pretty sure he would be, the better submission grappler. But I do think Elkins is the better wrestler. And I think Elkins, in terms of pace, just has, look, Elkins isn't great at anything. The one thing he is great at is just forcing pace, whether that's standing or in the grappling. And that's something that, I don't think Connolly from a technical standpoint is outclassed here, but I just think, the pace that Elkins is going to bring is just so much more than anything I've seen from Connolly. And I struggle to see him keeping up with that. On top of which, I do think of the two, if one of them is likely to get a lot of top time, it's Elkins. Like I think Connolly could get takedowns. I just struggle to see him having any meaningful control time. Whereas I could see Elkins potentially getting it. Not that I'm saying comparing Elkins grappling to Sabatini. Obviously, Sabatini is a better grappler, but we have seen when Connolly has gotten put flat on his back, both in the Pereira and Sabatini fights, he does have a tendency to not really look for a way up, play guard, throw strikes off the bottom. And that kind of thing just plays right into Elkins' game. On top of which, it's just like Elkins is a guy I'm kind of looking to fade, even though I've bet him a million times in his career. But you look at the guys who have hurt him, like Garagori, Swanson, whatever you want to say about Eduardo Garagori, the guy hits hard. Connolly's striking to me seems somewhat harmless, if that makes sense. The guy hasn't had a KO since 2016, and it was against an absolute bum who he KO'd. And so Connolly landing significant damage standing just feels unlikely. And if Connolly's unlikely to KO him and unlikely to sub him, it's like I have Elkins' pace and, his pedigree of, finding a way against much better fighters than Tristan Connolly, against Connolly, who pretty much is going to have to out-grapple Elkins. So I have Elkins around the 65-70% range here. So I think it's a pretty good look for him. Would I lay minus 185? Probably not, because I think you're getting into right around where it should be priced. But I do like Elkins here quite a bit.
Well, what's the line that you got on him?
Minus 140.
Oh, yeah. That's a solid line. That's much better than the heavy chalk that he's currently at right now. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing how this one goes, and let's see, how much of an effect that Cub Swanson KO actually had on Darren Elkins. Maybe that's the one that finally, turns the tide for Elkins, man. The guy is taking so much damage, so we'll see how it plays out. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Very interested to hear your take on this one. We got Jared Flash Gordon going up against Grant Dawson, minus 185 on Dawson, plus 160 to return on Jared Gordon. I've yet to make the bet, but I'm very much looking at the Jared Gordon side here, as I do really like him, especially as an underdog. The guy goes out there, fights for your money, whether he makes weight or not, like he did against Danny Chavez. But up at 155 pounds for the last couple fights now, looked really good on the scale. The guy looks really filled out at this weight class. But if he goes out there and gives us a classic Jared Gordon performance, I think we see him get the W here, man. He has good cardio, good pace, good pressure, never really lets his opponents off the hook. Great submission defense, as we saw in the Joe Selecki fight last time around. Sure, he'll likely get controlled at least for 6, maybe 7 minutes here by Grant Dawson, but I think he's going to do good enough with his grappling defense that he should eventually find his way back to his feet, maybe even get Dawson down himself and do some good work from on top, because his submission defense from on top looks pretty good. We haven't seen much of Dawson off of his back, so that's going to be a question mark that will likely be answered in this fight if Jared Gordon gets past that first round. Gordon normally has issues against guys with heavy power. Grant Dawson striking mainly just looks like it's the calf kick. That's about it. Just a active enough with the kicking game so that you can wait for your opportunity to close the distance and get the fight to the ground. But another big kind of X factor in this fight to consider is first fight for Grant Dawson being with American Top Team. He left the wings of his longtime master, James Krause, over there in Missouri. And I'm not sure what the change, why it came about. I tried fishing a little bit, couldn't really get much out of my guy, James. But, I saw a post by Grant where he thanked James and all that stuff, but I didn't see anything from the James side of things. So I feel like it wasn't as amicable of a departure as most might believe it was. Yeah. But the issue for Grant, maybe it was the lack of training partners there, right? How much are you going to be able to get off of training with Jeff Molina and Tim Elliott on a day-to-day basis, guys that aren't even in your weight class? Now you're getting so many other guys that you can train with on a day-to-day basis at American Top Team, and guys that are your skill level maybe, and even your size, which is going to be a very important thing for him as he continues to take steps up at 155 pounds. For me, so I like to call it a gas tank issue, but it's also a fight IQ issue that he might have, right? He just goes berserk looking for the finish, or, putting too much into his grappling early in fights, which is why he starts to taper off later, like we saw in the Ricky Glenn fight, which is why that fight ended up being a draw. But if he tries to do that here against Jared Gordon and doesn't get the finish early, man, he's going to pay for it just as much as he did in the Ricky Glenn fight, because Jared Gordon does not let you off the hook at all. So I am leaning on the Gordon side here as the dog. I don't think this line should be this wide at all. I think Dawson's a great talent, but I still feel like he has some flaws out there that need correcting. Could American Top Team be the missing ingredient for him? Maybe, but this is a very tough test for him to go out there and find that out against a guy like Jared Gordon. So as long as Gordon survives early here, I think he starts to take over after the 6-7 minute mark. Really starts to put it on Grant Dawson, stuff some takedowns, maybe even lands takedowns of his own, roughs him up on the feet, and takes home a decision victory. Maybe round 3's last decision. If you guys have access to those, I think that's a good spot as well. But even just taking the money line straight up here, I think is a damn good spot. Because Jared Gordon as an underdog is always a good bet more often than not, as long as he's not fighting somebody with the death touch, because his chin has been an issue in the past. I just don't know if Grant Dawson has that death touch. Don't give me that Leonardo Santos bull crap. We all know why that fight or that KO transpired the way that it did. But yeah, I'd be surprised if he puts out Jared Gordon on the feet here. I'm going Gordon, maybe even a live bet after round 1 on Gordon as well, because he'll likely be a bigger dog going into round 2. I feel like you're going to be on the other side here. Please do let me know.
Yeah, I love Dawson here, to be honest. I bet him at minus 150 for like 3 units. I honestly, I would have maxed it if it wasn't for the Ricky Glenn fight, because I've always considered Dawson to be a guy with very good cardio, and that fight, obviously, round 3 was about as ugly as it gets in that fight. Obviously, it's a major concern. But I have to lean to the side of that's not going to be repetitive things, since I've seen him go a hard 3 before multiple times. I guess for me, I love Jared Gordon. I bet him in his last 3 fights. I think he's perpetually underrated. But the problem is Gordon is a really blue collar lunch pail guy. He's going to go out there. He keeps a high pace. He wrestles. Guys who are not very good, he is going to dumpster just because he has the kind of tools you want to win fights. The problem for me is, and we've seen it, when he takes a step up, things tend to go badly. And I bet him big against Joe Solecki. And honestly, after watching that fight back, I don't think Joe Solecki is near Grant Dawson's level as a wrestler. Now, as a jiu-jitsu player, obviously he's better. But as a wrestler, no, when he was getting Gordon down fairly easily in that fight, Gordon only defends takedowns about 50% for his career. And, between that and Dan Moret putting him in some bad positions in the grappling, I'm just kind of well, unless Dawson gasses out, he's going to just take him down over and over again. He potentially could wear him down and get top position here. Look, on the feet, I'd favor Gordon, but Dawson tends to, even though I think Dawson's striking is garbage, to be honest, in the pocket. If Dawson gets into pocket exchanges, he's in big, big trouble. But he does a really tremendous job at limiting engagements. You basically almost never see him get into extended engagements. He does a very good job hanging on the outside and only initiating when he's trying to clinch up or take him down. And so, to me, I kind of just think Dawson is going to be able to bully Gordon here. He's a bigger guy here. I think he's more, even though he used to fight at 45 as well, I think he's more natural fit for 55 than Gordon is. I think he's a bit better of an athlete. And in terms of the wrestling, I mean, he's the best wrestler that Gordon's seen by a decent amount here. So I think he's going to get takedowns pretty easy. I think eventually he might start getting dominant position. The big question for me, and if I end up being wrong, you'll be right about this, is if his cardio does go off a cliff again, yeah, it could get worrisome and Gordon could take over later in this fight. But I kind of think it's going to be, I don't want to say resistance free, but I think he'll be able to do enough, have his own way with this fight enough that he should be able to just fight at an even keel for 15 minutes here and, take Gordon down over and over again, clinch him up. We saw him control Leo Santos between fence control and ground control for about 9 minutes. I could see this looking pretty similar to that fight. I think Dawson should be closer to minus 230, minus 250 here personally. So I'm on Dawson pretty big.
I love it. It's always weird for me to be pretty confident on the dog when John's on the chalky favorite. So let's see how this one plays out. Maybe it bites him in the ass because it's not his bread and butter. So maybe I end up with the cash in my pocket instead. But let's see how it goes. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Andre Fili going up against Anderson Brito. In terms of odds, we got minus 220. Wow, I'm seeing lines all over the place. I'm seeing minus 260, minus 250, minus 215, minus 220 on Andre Fili, plus 200-ish, all the way to about plus 180-ish that we're seeing on Anderson Brito as well. Interesting fight here. Weird that Brito seems to be getting a step up after losing his debut against Bill Algeo. but maybe Andre Fili just needs a dub. Now, I think Fili wins, but I'm just not as sure as most people seem to be, right? I've been seeing people hitting me up saying, oh, Andre Fili, lock of the night. How are you not already on this? So I'm just like, Fili is not a lock of the night kind of guy for me, right? He has a decent striking game, uses his footwork pretty well. His get-ups are, getting better, but he's dealing with a or a legit bull here in Joanderson Brito. The guy just is all action all the time, moves forward, either looking to take your head off or try to get you to the ground and then take your head off on the mat. Like the guy is all action all the time. But I feel as though it might start to get a little sloppy as the fight starts to go on, just as we saw in the Bill Algeo fight. If he's not able to get massive success early in fights, he starts to fall off, not a cliff per se, but his productivity starts to taper off a little bit. And Andre Fili, gone 15 minutes so many times in the UFC. I think his UFC debut. Actually, no, I don't know why I was thinking his UFC debut was against Calvin Kattar. That was Calvin Kattar's UFC debut, if I'm not mistaken. But the guy's been in the UFC for years. Like, I remember back in the day when they were giving him like all these accolades and be like, oh, he's the next big thing out of Team Alpha Male. Never really panned out to be that next big thing, but he's just a mainstay in the UFC that can still go out there and have competitive fights and be a solid gatekeeper for that division. I think he keeps the gate closed here against Joanderson Brito. I think he touches him up well enough on the feet that the judges see him landing the more impactful shots. The thing that kind of worries me, though, is the forward movement, constant forward movement of Joanderson Brito. If he lands enough shots, he can make it look good enough for the judges that the judges ended up siding with him once the scorecards are read. But that's the constant theme that I'm harping on here is the fact that this will likely go the full 15 minutes. I like the fight goes to decision at minus 150, minus 140, as I do think that Brito, a notorious finisher, will have issues here closing the distance against Andre Fili and having tremendous success against him if he does manage to get him to the mat here. I'm leaning on Fili using his footwork and his striking from the outside to land the more impactful shots to get the judge's decision. But I'm not laying minus 220 up to minus 250 now on Andre Fili to win this fight. Give me fight goes to decision, but as official prediction, I'm going to go with the Fili side. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I can't lay Fili here. To your point, it's kind of just like Brito's the kind of guy who will just steer into chaos. And like, that is not the kind of guy you want to be. Like, if I'm going to fade a guy like Brito at chalk, it's got to be a guy who's just going to grind him, and that's not really Fili's game. I do think Fili is the more skilled fighter everywhere this fight takes place. He's clearly the better striker. He's far more technical. I even think he's the better wrestler, but he's not really a control wrestler, and while I don't think Brito will hold him down, we have seen Fili get controlled a bit more than usual in recent years. And so that is a bit of a concern. I do think, though, Fili should really have his way. Could be a dicey first round, but I kind of think after the first, he likely takes over the fight. But yeah, I mean, look, clearly the UFC sees something in Brito. I think the guy is interesting because of how aggressive he is. Those are always guys you want to back, but I think he has holes both in terms of his wrestling, his top game, and his striking. But the UFC sees something if he's losing a fight to Bill Algeo, and now they're like, okay, well, here's Andre Fili. I'll try this out. Here's your second UFC fight. But yeah, I mean, I lean Fili. I think he's the far more skilled fighter. It's not that hard to imagine him dropping the first round and maybe Brito stealing a greasy second or third where he gets 2 or 3 takedowns. So not something I really want to be a part of. I do kind of like the under a tad, to be honest with you, just because, like, if Brito can't clinch him up fully, they're going to be swinging haymakers at distance a good bit here. I don't think either guy has a durability issue, though, so I'm not really passionate about it. But yeah, I lean Fili slightly into the under. I might bet it. I'm not really sure, just kind of watching it.
For the level of fights that we've been talking about, I feel like we've still been on the prelims, but the fact that we're one fight away from the co-main event is crazy to me. No disrespect to Jared Gordon and Grant Dawson. That's a great fight. That is an absolutely, that deserves to be on the main card of a fight night for sure. But Joanderson Brito against Andre Fili, God damn. All right. Let's move on to the co-main event here where we have my guy, Jay Collier, taking on the veteran Andre Arlovski. In terms of odds, we got minus 130 on Arlovski, plus 110 the return on Jay Collier. I've been trying to come up with a case for my guy, Jay Collier. I'm seeing some people that I respect on the Jay Collier train, but I do think that if this turns out to be a 50-minute kickboxing matchup, which it will likely be, I do think that Arlovski finagles his way to another decision victory. I did bet against Arlovski last time around at pretty solid underdog odds on Jared Vanderaa, and Vanderaa did a good job in terms of getting Arlovski into the positions he needed to, just never pulled the trigger. And I don't know what it was that was keeping Vanderaa stuck in mud or just not even willing to pull the trigger there until at least the third round where he finally started to let it go and had success. But like those first 2 rounds, man, I don't know what it was. The knockout threat of Andre Arlovski. When was the last time he knocked somebody out? Travis Brown, like 6 years ago. So like, I don't know why he wouldn't pull the trigger. Arlovski did a good job, even after getting into those bad positions, just did his patented blitz forward, land a couple of strikes, 2-3 strikes, get back into open cage, rinse and repeat, wins the first 2 rounds, and then get the judge's decision. Here against Collier will likely pull the trigger early in this fight, but as the fight starts to go on, we've seen him kind of taper off in terms of, his body language and just his not so much his volume, because he sustains the same amount of volume. It just doesn't look as pretty the later a fight goes. Perfect example is the Carlos Felipe fight. And I think if Arlovski sniffs any sort of, bit of him slowing down or showing any sign of weakness, we'll see him start to open up with the strikes and, put up his own numbers as well. So I do lean on the Arlovski side, not by a whole lot. Like, I still think that this is like a 55-45 situation, with the benefit being to the veteran here who goes out there and seems to, specialize in those types of fights where he just goes out there and outpoints guys ever so slightly. And I think that's what's going to happen here against Jake Collier. There's nothing more as a Jake Collier fan that I want to see than him go out there and add a scalp like Arlovski to his belt here. But I just don't see it happening. And the last thing I'll say about this, and I'll flip it on over to you, to John. I'm seeing a lot of takes of, what if Jake Collier goes out there and grapples? Small possibility.
Come on.
But like, just because the Chase Sherman fight, you guys think he's like Khabib now? Like, he even stated in his post-fight interview, he goes, I know that Chase throws lazy leg kicks. If he throws one against me, I'm going to catch him. I'm going to take him down, and I'm going to rough him up on the ground. That's exactly what happened. How often do you see Arlovski getting taken down and dominated? The Tom Aspinall fight, but that was such a weird one too, because like, he got taken down, works right back to his feet, but leaves his neck wide open to get taken by Aspinall. Outside of that, like, it doesn't happen often against Arlovski where he's getting taken down over and over again. So, and even if Jake tries to take that path to victory, Andre's a big dude. It's going to take him a lot of energy to keep him down, get him down, and hold him down. And if that, if he doesn't finish him, we're going to see his body language look worse and worse as the fight starts to wear on. So I lean the Arlovski side here, just finagling his way to another decision victory. But man, the fan in me is all over Jake Collier here. No money on this fight for me, but I do lean the Arlovski side. Obvious, over 2.5 here, minus 220. It's chalky as hell, but that just seems to be Arlovski fights nowadays. Fight goes to decision minus 190, but Arlovski by decision would probably be the only way I play this fight at plus 125, because I just don't think he has the power anymore to knock out a guy like Jake Collier. And we know he doesn't really throw much into his strikes anymore. It's more so just to get the number and get the output out there. So give me Arlovski by decision, but the over 2.5 fight goes to decision is probably where I put my money if I were forced to. What about you? Are you going to make a case for my guy Jake here at all, or what?
Arlovski can't keep getting away with it, can he?
I just see somebody like in the corner rocking back and forth, just trying to bet against Arlovski all the time. And he's like Carlos Felipe, Tanner Bozer, fucking like all these guys.
The thing is, I think like theoretically, you could make a volume-based case for Collier, but you kind of touched on it a bit. Collier does slow down. He'll keep the output high, but the optics are bad when he slows down. I do think when Arlovski does blitz, he tends to sit down on his punches a bit more than Collier does. And like we saw Collier lose a decision to Carlos Felipe where he outlanded him by 50 strikes,
Yeah.
We saw a close decision with Jean Vellante where he outlanded him by like 40 strikes. And so Collier has the volume upside. The problem is we've seen this movie before, it's like, first of all, like, even if he outvolumes him, Collier's style just tends to fight close. But the other thing is, it's like, first of all, Andre Arlovski, he's gotten this game going against better guys than Jake Collier. Like, just the reality. Like, Tanner Bozer, I would say, was a similar fight to Collier, but Bozer's a better leg kicker than Collier is. And, he managed to weasel that fight out. He should have lost it, but I don't know. I kind of just think Arlovski's going to do Arlovski things, and it's going to be a 50-50 fight where we're sitting there at the end like, probably Arlovski, but maybe Collier. My question really with Collier and why I'm having kind of a hard time getting a read on whether I'd want to play the dog money, just like Collier kind of likes to fight in the style Arlovski does, where he's like kind of on the outside and then engaging on his terms. Whereas here, Arlovski's not going to go forward. He's gonna make Collier come to him. And like, I don't really know. Yeah.
That's all he does. He just waits, paws out that lead jab, and then blitzes forward with like 3 strikes, and then waits for the next moment to do the same thing.
He's like Arlovski's like the dad you play basketball with when you're in high school, who just did all like the crafty old man moves. Like he's way less athletic than all the kids he's playing with, but he just kind of
just hitting the set jumper.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, he just keeps hitting that
13-footer after 13-footer.
That's a great comparison. Good God.
And I don't know how Collier is going to cut the cage off because we haven't seen him have to cut someone off really. And maybe he can do it effectively. Like I do think if Collier can consistently force engagements in the pocket, he can win this fight and could even look like a favorite doing it. But like, I'm not sure I believe he can do that. We haven't seen many guys be able to do that. Now with that said, I'm not betting Andre Arlovski here.
Yeah.
I hope Collier wins because he's fun and he's young, but he's not grappling Arlovski. Arlovski's not a bad grappler, man. Getting subbed by Tom Aspinall is not really that big a deal, Yeah. It's gonna be an outside kickboxing match. We'll see what happens. I think Arlovski's gonna weasel another one, to be honest, but I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to see Jake get it done.
If Jake wins, I'm buying a Jake Collier fight kit. I'm saying it right now.
I will do it as well.
We can do the next Ultimate Wayne show together wearing our Collier fucking things. Shout out to some of the comments in here though. Kunat saying mid-range with no knee bend. That was fucking hilarious. Danny Lake saying John the GOAT for that comparison. Arlovski, aka the Dirk step back. Like I fucking love it. I love it. And Mbae just letting y'all know Collier champ 2023. Let's fucking go. Fight ends in split. Plus 450. Absolutely a possibility, man, considering how close this fight could end up being. I absolutely see that going down as well. But seems like me and John are going to be taking the Arlovski side here, weaseling another way to a dub. All right. That brings us to the main event. Shout out to the 120 live viewers that we currently have. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Show my guy John some love as well on Twitter at MMA Fox, FAWKES. And also check out his podcast, the Club and Sub podcast, with the aforementioned Danny Legs, Luke from Sparring with Reality as well. So make sure you guys go check that out. Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. They're a hoot to watch. Trust me. One of the few podcasts I listen to after I do my own research and all that stuff as well. So show them some love. All right. Main event time. Rob Font, Marlon Chito Vera. In terms of odds, we got minus 130 on Rob Font, plus 110 the return on Marlon Vera. Now, unfortunately, the only weight miss that we had today was in the main event here. Rob Font, uncharacteristically, coming in 2.5 pounds overweight. Not sure what that indicates, whether it's an injury in camp, whether he just wasn't ready to take this fight. He's the consummate professional, right? It was very, very surprising to see him be the one that missed weight in this spot. It's not one of those spots that completely flips my pick. Like, I still think that Rob Font's going to go out there and do work. But it does give me a little bit of pause, especially with the way that Chito Vera fights, which is, he builds as the fight starts to go on, right? We saw Jose Aldo really muzzle him in that third round by grabbing the back, especially after, Jose Aldo won round one, starts to fall behind in round two, grabs the back in round three, and just backpacks him for like 4.5 minutes to, ride his way to a decision victory. Rob Font, I think he has a perfect style to deal with the style of Chito Vera. And the way to do that, I think, are perfectly laid out in the first rounds of the Jose Aldo and the Davy Grant fight. Put volume on this guy. Stay consistent. Stay, you don't need to pressure per se, but just throw volume out there, throw output, and it'll keep Chito Vera thinking, and he won't be able to get much off of that. Now, people are saying, okay, yeah, he gets stronger as the fight goes on. I believe there is some validation to that, but I think it's also because his opponents are not able to keep up that output, and they start to fall behind, and Chito starts to pick it up as it starts to go on. Rob Font is not one of those guys that really starts to slow down, right? I believe he started to slow down in the Jose Aldo fight because he got clipped at the ending of that first round and then seemed to be hesitant after that because of the power that was coming back his way. And I just don't think that Chito Vera has that one punch power that's going to cause Rob Font some issues or even some hesitancy going out there and doing what he does. And that's working behind his jab. Stick that jab out there, bring that right hand every now and then after it. But if he stays on that and keeps the numbers on Chito Vera, I think he cruises in this fight all 25 minutes. Like, I don't think it's going to be Chito Vera gets more dangerous as the fight goes on. I think he's just going to get, ruffled. Like, I think he's just going to get baffled by the volume and output that's going to continuously come his way. I'm interested to see who decides to go to the grappling first, because I think whoever does could have some success in the top position. Both guys, are kind of reliant with playing guard off of their back, not really showing the most urgency to get back to their feet. I'd say Chito Vera shows more urgency than anything, but he's not this crazy wrestler that's going to hold Rob Font down for, 15 minutes out of a 25-minute fight. So I lean with Rob Font. The weight miss just has me a little bit skeptical, because if this does go deep into a fight and if it was really an injury that caused him to miss weight, that's really what I think it is. It's got to be some sort of injury or something that caused him to miss weight, because he's never missed weight in the past. And now you're talking about his third ever main event slot. He's going to miss weight. Something's a little bit fishy to me. I still think he wins this fight. I think he wins by decision. The over is something that's intriguing to me as well. Over 4.5 is, well, it's minus 160 now. It was a little bit more intriguing when I was in the minus 130-ish range, but I still lean Font. It's the weight miss this morning is not going to take me off that. I didn't have any intentions on betting this fight anyway, and this further cements me not wanting to bet this fight. But I do lean with Rob Font as my official prediction. What about yourself?
The weight miss really fucking me up, to be honest, because Font's probably my most confident take on the entire card, if I'm being completely honest. I have three.
I felt like that was some sarcasm there for a second.
No, I absolutely love Font here, to be honest. I have 3 units on him at like minus 130. I am a little nervous. Like, honestly, I don't know how much stock to put into it, because we see people miss weight sometimes and then look great. And then we see people miss weight and look horrible. It seems like it's kind of just flip a coin as to what, are they going to look bad or good? It's concerning. But with that said, I mean, I think Font was basically built in a lab to beat Chito Vera badly, to be honest with you. I know everybody talks about, Chito late rounds, you better watch out. But it's like, Rob Font's got great cardio, man. Like, he's not going to stand in front of him.
Hold on, John. I want to go on that, because me and Cody were talking about that a little bit yesterday on our Propping You Up show. But I'm looking back at his fights where he's won in the second, third, or fourth, like win a decision because he starts to put it on later. Luigi Burin, round 2. Guido Canetti, round 2, cardio issues. Frankie Saenz, he beats in the first round. Frankie Saenz is fucking 77 years old. No, Helen Hernandez sucks, beats him in the second round. Andre Ewell slows down as fights go on, beats him in the third round, loses a decision to Yadong Song. Say what you want about the decision. He didn't win that fight. Sean O'Malley fight, first round. Jose Aldo fight, loses that fight by losing the third round by not getting off of that back control. Davy Grant has a great third round, but Davy Grant, another guy that seems to slow down as fights go on. And then the Frankie Edgar fight, who's fucking 45 years old, right? You're getting Rob Font in his prime right now.
Dude, you can make an argument he was about to lose the third round against Edgar. That was not like one-way traffic. Edgar was winning the boxing exchanges in round 3, and then he died to a front kick, But, either way, it's just like, there's a couple things, because it's like, how much stock do I put in the Jose Aldo fight? Because I bet Aldo in that fight, and I bet him because I thought that Aldo does such a good job suppressing volume, he'd be able to suppress Font's volume. He didn't. Font got off volume on him like crazy. The problem is Aldo just kept hurting him. And that is a concern for here, right? Because is that now look, Jose Aldo, much sharper counter striker than Marlon Vera is, much bigger hitter than Marlon Vera is. But, it's like maybe Font's got declining durability. I don't really know. But that's the big red flag for me here. And then with the weight miss, it's obviously concerning. But the fact that he got off that much volume against Jose Aldo, dude, he's going to put it on Vera on the feet here. I don't think people realize, like, the striking disparity skill-wise between Chito Vera and Rob Font. He is look, maybe he can't take shots anymore and that gets him finished. That's possible. I'm not going to say it's not, But if Rob Font is 100% tomorrow, he is going to beat the fucking shit out of Cheeto. Pardon my French. He is going to beat up Cheeto Vera on the feed. I promise you guys. Okay. The only case I can see for Vera outstriking Font is maybe he compromises his leg with kicks, or it turns out Font can't take a shot. But he's not going to outvolume him. I will guarantee Font lands more distance strikes by a lot than Vera does tomorrow. Like 100% guarantee it. Unless the dude is just done. But I don't think so. I mean, he's like, what, 33, 32 Font? He's not that old, you know?
I'll get the exact age for you here in a sec. He is 34. He'll be 35 in June.
And on top of you can make a grappling based case for Vera, I guess, but like Ricky Simone is a much better grappler than Cheeto Vera is, and he couldn't hold him down. He got a bunch of takedowns, but he got back up. And so it's like I could see Vera getting a takedown or two, struggle to see him controlling position. On the other side of things, we just saw Rob Font take down Jose Aldo, who's like one of the best counter grapplers we've ever seen in the sport. Font could get on top of Vera, and Vera does play guard, as everyone knows, you know. I don't know. This kind of reminds me to a degree of Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar, where everybody was just ignoring the fact that like one of these guys lands a lot more strikes than his opponent. And one of these guys gets outlanded by his opponents consistently. One of these guys has been outlanding his opponents severely against top level competition. One of them has had pretty sketchy moments with like mid-tier competition. I just kind of think everybody's looking at Vera's run and his run of finishes and thinking, oh, you know, Rob Font, we just saw Jose Aldo almost finish him here. Obviously, Vera's going to finish him. I don't think so, man. I really think Font's got him covered just about everywhere this fight goes. The big concern is the weight miss. It might affect him, and maybe he breaks because of it. Maybe his cardio shot, maybe his durability is. Obviously, I am less confident after that than I was before it. But to me, it doesn't change the dynamic much. Rob Font is going to play ping pong with his head, you know, while he's fresh. And let me tell you something, Rob Font builds as fights go on over 5 rounds. You know, he is not the guy you spot 2 rounds to and come back against. When Font starts getting his jab working and start working in combination, he generally gets better as fights go on at distance, then get worse. I think the idea that Font's going to slow and Cheeto's going to easily walk him down is kind of dumb. I also kind of think people are saying Cheeto's the only guy who could finish this fight. Maybe. Dude, Cheeto has gotten finished before in the past. It's been a long time, but Font can crack, and Font is going to punch him in the face many times here. So I don't know. I don't get it. Blood Diamond saying he got better against Aldo over 5. I'm not saying that. Look, the Aldo fight, if Cheeto Vera comes out here and wobbles him every time he lands, then this is a terrible bet and Rob Font shot, right?
That's the big part is I think that people are overlooking that Aldo damaged him how much with his big shots. Can Cheeto present the same issues? Like, sure, he can touch him up, but is he going to drop him, hurt him? That will tax your gas tank. That will make you slow down. That will make you more hesitant over 5 rounds. But we saw him go a solid 25 minutes against Cody Garbrandt. And I know people are saying, oh, he can't put out Cody Garbrandt. But what is that? How is that taking away from his skill set? He beat him dominantly over 25 minutes. Just because he didn't finish him doesn't take away from his skill set. I don't understand that argument. You're making a dominant 5-round victory and just throwing it out the window.
You look at Cheeto and the guys he's dropped, it's usually off kicks, knees, or elbows. He's not like dropping guys with his hands. And like, I don't think he's going to have an easy time. First of all, it's very hard to kick someone who's taller than you, like Font is. Second of all, I don't think he's going to have an easy time, you know, just forcing this fight into the clinch. And Font's not betting the clinch either. But, you know, Font's got some of the best footwork in the division. You know, that guy does not stand in front of you. Even in the Aldo fight, you know, he had a lot of boxing success in that fight against Jose Aldo of all people. I just think Cheeto's going to have a very hard time dictating this fight on his terms. You know, it's kind of easy to look at like the Song fight, but Song's a guy who's going to bite down at the mouthpiece and just swing in the pocket with you. You know, he is happy to oblige the war. Font's going to fight the distance game, and I don't really think Cheeto has the tools to compete on minutes here. Does he have the tools to finish him? Definitely. Could he damage him with leg kicks? Definitely. Could Font be compromised? Definitely. But Font's massively more skilled fighter, in my opinion. And I really think unless he's compromised, he's going to roll in this fight without really any issues.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's kind of what concerns me. There must be some sort of injury. Like if he's missed weight in the past and he missed weight today, then I wouldn't be as concerned. But the fact that it's the first time he's ever missed weight is a little bit of a concern for me, which is why I'm staying away from the fight. Ultimately, yeah, I was going to stay away from the fight regardless, because I am interested to see what Chito Vera looks like in a 5-round fight. But I still do think that Font is the much better fighter overall in the spot. So go ahead.
I do think Chito is built for 5-round fights. Like I'm not meaning to like just dump on Chito here, to be clear. Yeah. I just kind of think Font is pretty much the exact archetype I'd look for to beat up Chito, you know? Yeah. I think Chito gives a lot of guys in the top 10 issues over 5 rounds. I just kind of think this is a pretty tailor-made matchup for Font and what Font wants to do.
I like it. Let's see how it plays out tomorrow. Again, as long as he comes in healthy and we get a legitimate Rob Font, I'll give Vera some more respect, especially if he ends up pulling up the victory as well. All right. Last thing we do on this show, your favorite play on the card. I'll kick it off. I likely won't have a lock of the night play for this. And it's been a couple weeks since I haven't done, but man, it's been a little rough for the confidence over the last couple of weeks. So I'm trying to build that back up a little bit before I go balls deep on a play. But I think my biggest bet for this card will likely be Krzysztof Jotko. I'm going to go maybe 2 to 3 units on him here. Money line -175. Yeah, I think that this is a perfect tailor-made matchup for him against GM3. I'd be surprised if GM3 gets this into his realm. I really would. So give me Jotko -175. What about yourself?
Well, until about 2.5 hours ago, it would have been Rob Font. I guess I'll go Grant Dawson. I really do think it's a great matchup for Dawson here. I think he's going to be able to get the takedowns at will. And I think unless it turns out that his cardio is just bad at 155, I think it's likely his cardio looks fine and he's going to win an easy 30-27.
I like it. Hopefully it doesn't pay off because I'll likely be on the third guard inside here. But yeah, we'll see how this plays off. And just a little bit of fact checking for some guys that don't think that Rob Font can crack. Just since 2016, 1, 2, 3, 4 wins by knockout. Just saying. Sometimes your chin shows up, like Chris Moutinho for 14.5 minutes against Sean O'Malley. Sometimes it doesn't, like Guido Canetti, where 2.5, 3 minutes into a fight.
Could you believe that Moutinho Canetti under was even money? Holy crap.
Crazy to me. Again, chins show up some days, chins don't show up other days. That's all that matters. That's MMA. That's the game. That's why we bet the fight doesn't go to decision in Santos and Walker and it goes 25 fucking minutes because you think somebody's going to lay out clean, but it doesn't happen. So, all right. John, appreciate you taking the time on this Friday afternoon to break down the card one last time. Shout out to everybody that checked out the video on the replay as well. If you guys want to listen to it on the audio as well, it's on all podcasting platforms as well. I will be back tomorrow for the Fight Day live chat at 1 p.m. Eastern to take all questions, comments, and concerns for the fights. Get any last-minute bets in that you guys want as well. That's going to be 1 p.m. Eastern. I'll hang out with you guys for about a half an hour or so. And then I believe the fights kick off slightly earlier, 4:30 p.m. Eastern start time for the prelims. So make sure you guys don't get caught napping. Watch those fights. John, once again, appreciate you joining with us. I do want to actually give you the platform here. Anything you want to plug last minute here?
Yeah, guys, Club and Sub Podcast, 10 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday night. Check it out on the Club and Sub Podcast YouTube channel. And you can follow me on Twitter, as Locke said, and MMA Fox. I'm always down to talk fights. Either you agree, disagree, want to shoot me a DM, want my opinion about something, always down to chat. Good luck on your bets this weekend.
Yes, sir. We may disagree on certain picks, but it's all love at the end of the day. We break down 24 fighters a week for you guys. We're obviously going to disagree on certain parts. Good luck on your bets, everybody. And let's go War Jake Collier. Even though we're picking against him, War Jake Collier. Let's see how he does tomorrow against the veteran Andre Arlovski. Good luck on your bets, folks.
Later, guys.